You know how people often say your first love story was with your parents? That used to be the case for me. I believed that my parents were the type of pair that could weather any hardship, even starvation, war, or the end of the world. However, it turns out that when no one is looking, even the strongest foundations can fall apart. Everything started to fall apart in the spring of 2019, and at the time, I didn't even have a hint that it would happen. My name is Rachel, and I am currently 37 years old. I am married to Mark, who is the most grounded man on the earth. In addition to having 2 children and acres of land in the mountains of Utah, my parents, Noah and Lorraine, have always been a part of our tranquil existence. 38 years had passed since their marriage. They were in love, not simply surviving their marriage. The authentic sort, the kind on which your entire worldview rests. After retirement, they took a year-long trip around the country, alternating between the cool, green West Coast and their sun-kissed home in Arizona. It was a gorgeous riverfront property with a camper, a diesel truck, and all the toys you could possibly want, including a boat, jet skis, and a patio that seemed to be blessed with an evening breeze. Every year, they would stay with us for about a month. On our property, my husband even set up a whole RV with electricity, water, and septic for them. We had a lovely rhythm, Mom laughing with my kids, their dog chasing dragonflies in the golden light, and Dad grilling. Whenever possible, my brother Ben and his family would travel in from Georgia, and life was perfect. I will always remember thinking, this is how love should look. But in April of last year, that illusion was destroyed. As with all implosions, it began modestly. A ripple, which became a wave. In Arizona, Mom made a new acquaintance. Denise was 64, recently divorced, and a bit annoyingly loud. She seemed to derive her sense of value from each laugh she elicited from a crowd. I didn't like her either. Not at all. It was the way she dug her claws into people, not just the fact that she was bold. The way she became the center of attention, like if she were the sun. The speed at which my mom was drawn into her own gravity was what most surprised me. Mom had always been kind. A hiker, a reader, a wine drinker twice a year, and a cookie maker with the grandchildren. Not someone who hung out with a woman who listened to 80s rock music and flirted with bartenders like a woman half her age, or who went out for happy hour twice a week. That winter, I sat on their porch in Arizona and watched a silent sunset as the temperature dropped. With my fingers clenched around my coffee mug, I informed her honestly, "Mom, I don't trust her. Denise, there's something strange about her." Mom dismissed my worry like lint and simply grinned. "You worry too much, Rachel. She is not dangerous. She's been through a lot, but she's a little crazy." I didn't exert more pressure. I wish I had. Denise wasn't the only one. She spread over the entire social circle like a virus. Even several of my mom's former friends began to change, go out more, and drink more. All of them become unidentifiable. Mom sweet, soft-spoken. Mom was sitting shotgun in a fast convertible with the top down and her principles abandoned. As if a midlife revolt had been sparked. Denise then purchased a boat. That wouldn't have been concerning on its own, but when Mom revealed that Dad was assisting her in choosing it, I felt uneasy. "Are you certain that's a smart idea?" One evening when they were visiting, I asked him, assisting her with such a significant purchase? Dad, who was always cool and collected, dismissed it. "She is completely ignorant about boats. All I'm doing is making sure she doesn't purchase trash." However, he handled money carefully. It has always been. He was not like this. Additionally, It didn't sit well when he began teaching Denise how to operate the boat alongside Mom. Then Tuesday arrived. Like teenagers skipping class, Mom, Denise, and another friend, Cheryl, headed out on Denise's boat to a river bar for drinks. Even though it was just Tuesday, they had already done it once that week. Dad's voice sounded odd, as if he were trying to sound unconcerned. When he called me that evening, he tried to appear informal as he said, "Lorraine called. They're visiting Denise's friend's river cottage after running into him. Stated that they would return in about an hour. A companion?" With my stomach churning, I repeated, "Who is he?" She remained silent. "Rach, it's probably nothing." However, I knew my mother. She wasn't the type of woman who drank with strangers after sunset. She was changing, and I detested the fact that I could sense it, but was unable to stop it. That night, she arrived home after 9. According to Dad, everything appeared to be okay. There were no stories, only hazy references to nice views and good conversations. The following day went off without any problems, but everything went south on Thursday. They left once more. One more hour of joy, more laughs, more drinks. Dad stayed behind this time to work on the truck alongside Cheryl's husband. Around 8 p.m., he took a shower and discovered that he had missed his mother's call. I was there when he called back. I observed him seeing the faint furrow of perplexity on his forehead. His voice was warm but cautious as he said, "Hey, honey, what's going on?" "I'm eager to return home," she said. "I don't want to stay, but the others do." He promised to come get her, and upon his return, he described the ride home as strange. She didn't say anything. Far away. He said, "I felt like she wasn't really listening, even though she let me talk." Everything broke that night. Dad entered first. Mom entered behind him and then fell to her knees in front of him, trembling and embracing his legs. He initially believed she was being stupid, possibly due to fatigue or intoxication. Then he saw that she was in tears. "I'm crying a lot." Her words came out like broken glass as she gulped. I cheated on you, Noah. I sincerely apologize." Dad stopped. The kind of silence that only occurs when your soul briefly departs from your body. "What?" As if he hadn't heard her, he whispered, as if she might say something different. She sobbed even more as she said, "I cheated on you. It was an error. Don't leave me. Please, please." He didn't yell. He refrained from using profanity. Calm as a man watching the end of the world, he ordered her, "Go take a shower. We will discuss this in the morning." She pleaded with him not to sleep, not to abandon her in the midst of the kitchen, crying. However, he did, and he packed his things softly that night while she sat outside their bedroom, apologizing in a whisper to a door that was closed. He disappeared in the morning. The camper was, too. She called me early the following morning. Her voice was urgent and harsh. "Where is your father, Rachel? Did you see him?" "The camper has left." Then another call, this one from him. Be calm, measured, final. He declared, "I'm divorcing her. Until it's official, I'll remain in the camper. My lawyer will speak to her." I felt like screaming, weep, inquire as to how two people who were meant to be forever might experience this. However, that was just the start. Have you ever heard your mom scream in a way that no longer sounds human? As if something old and shattered had exploded inside her. The morning after Dad left, I heard that sound on the other end of the phone. Not crying, not crying, just this hollow, unadulterated sound, similar to a well's bottom that hasn't had any water in years. I stood in my kitchen with the coffee brewing and the sun streaming in through the windows as usual, warming the floor, as if nothing had changed and the world wasn't crumbling beneath the surface. "He's gone," Mom said repeatedly in a shaky voice. "Rachel, when I woke up, The camper was just gone. He is no longer there. Jack is no longer there. When she was in a lot of pain, she nicknamed him Jack, not Noah. No, sweetie, not even honey. That's how I knew it was real, that she was no longer living in denial, not about the fact that he had gone. She didn't know yet, but I did, that he had moved all of his belongings out the previous evening while she was asleep. His old black bag with the damaged zipper, clothes, and a shaving kit. He had moved out of the bedroom like a ghost, silent and resolute. After opening the sliding door, the door was not even slammed by him. At 6:03 a.m., he texted her, just 4 words. She read them out loud as if they were a curse being inscribed on her soul, and I can still clearly recall them. We are officially no longer together. Then she let her phone fall. I think I could hear her hitting the tile floor over the phone as her legs buckled. How she didn't break is beyond me, but something inside her did. Like a hurricane tearing through her bones, you could feel it. She gave him a call, again and again. He didn't respond, not till the 5th time. He was steady in his voice when he finally picked up, chilly, far away, like a stranger being given directions. Lorraine, I'm divorcing you. Until the paperwork is filed, I will remain in the camper. By that time, she was pleading. Like her life depended on it, she begged. Jack, please don't do this. Let me explain now. His voice, however, remained constant. Not once. At this time, I have no interest in listening to whatever you have to say. My lawyer is going to get in touch with you. The line then stopped working. She was gutted by that stillness. It wasn't as good as shouting, even worse than rage, because the decision has already been taken if there is quiet. There is no more struggle to be had. The conflict is over. You were defeated. However, it didn't end there. No, this was only the beginning of the story. You see, Mom was unaware that this was about more than just her and Dad, and I didn't realize that until much later. It was larger. It's messier. Not merely my mother's heart had been contaminated by Denise. She had established a network. She had drawn other ladies into her social circle, including Mom's longtime neighborhood friend Cheryl. As it happens, Cheryl had secrets of her own. Additionally, her husband locked her out of the house after learning of her involvement in whatever the hell everything was. Use a deadbolt. On the doorstep is a suitcase, like in a lousy television drama. What happened to her? You guessed it. Denise's, the very queen of chaos. As if it were a sleepover, I recall Mom telling me that Cheryl was now staying with Denise while I was standing on my back deck with my phone to my ear. As if our family hadn't just exploded due to this whole catastrophe. I was ill, sick, not just angry, betrayed, lost. Because my mother, who taught me how to bake, who showed me how to braid my daughter's hair, and who used to always put a note in my lunchbox when I was having a rough week, was no longer that lady. She had changed into someone I didn't know. She had changed from a mother and wife to someone who was obsessed with a man she hardly knew. Someone who, as if it didn't matter, has thrown 38 years of marriage into the river. That evening, Dad personally broke the news to my brother and me over the phone. We didn't hear it above Mom's sobs because he wanted to be the one to say it. His voice was low when he talked. Be calm. However, behind everything, I could hear something. Not anger, not grief, just exhaustion. I'm exhausted. It's over, he declared. It was there in an instant. Mom then began to fall apart. In a way I didn't believe was possible. She refrained from crying in public. She didn't hurl anything or yell. No, she wandered. Literally. She got behind the wheel. She would get up every morning and head to the car, looking for her father, for his camper, I suppose for a chance to make it right, but she was never able to locate him. Ben and I were aware of his location. He had informed us, swore us to confidentiality. Don't tell her. he said. I require room. I have to take a breath. And we respected that. We were forced to. It was he who was deceived. The person he trusted the most was the one who let him down. However, it wasn't easy to watch her break. In 2 weeks, she drove over 1,800 kilometers, from one encampment to another, parking lots for grocery stores. The truck comes to a stop, asking around, searching. I'm hoping. Every day, her voice grew weaker. She spoke more frantically. Rach, I simply missed him. The camper must have moved out just before I arrived, since I swear I saw him. I was broken by it. Ghosts were what she was after. I gave her a call one evening following yet another exhausting day of traveling. Her voice was tired and scratchy when she responded. Come home, Mom, I murmured. Please, simply spend a few days with us. I am unable to. I must locate him. No, you don't. You must take a break. Please, I'm concerned. The children are anxious. She didn't say anything for a while. Then she finally murmured, okay, in the smallest whisper. I've never heard an okay so shattered. 2 days later, she showed up at our place, looking smaller, as if a fragment of her had been removed and discarded. We offered the guest room to her. Give her some time to relax. However, an hour later, my youngest daughter screamed and ran into the living room. Mom, Grandma's in pain. She was hunched over on the floor, clutching her stomach when I rushed to the room. She had a gray face, sweating, taking quick breaths. We took her to the hospital right away. Dehydration, infection, fever. Then the actual blow struck. The doctor entered with gloomy eyes. We discovered an infection, he stated cautiously. It's caused by sexual contact. I blinked, unable to talk, not even able to think. A sexually transmitted disease, STD, was contracted by my 59-year-old mother from the man she had cheated on her father with. What's the worst? She didn't even appear startled. She simply mumbled, I'm sorry, and closed her eyes, as though saying sorry could make everything better, as if any of this could be fixed by it, as though he might return. However, it was unable to. Furthermore, we had not yet arrived at the conclusion. Don't you think hospitals have a distinct smell? Sickness and bleach, as if the air itself were worn out. For the 3rd consecutive night we were there, with her face white and drenched in perspiration. My mother lay in the emergency room, hooked up to IVs. I tried not to cry in front of the woman who had once been my idol, as I sat next to her, clenching my hands in my lap and hardly blinking. She was no longer present. There was someone else instead. Someone who was burned out, damaged, and fragile after running after a ghost she had scared away with a match. The doctor informed me that they were modifying her antibiotics when he entered, his eyes pleasant but weary. Her ailment, whatever it was not going away. They were worried. They needed to hit it harder since it might be a drug-resistant strain, the kind that has been more prevalent recently. She remained silent. She simply gazed at the ceiling as if it were providing her with the answers she was unable to discover elsewhere. I muttered once, Mom, not even sure what I was saying. She didn't respond, though. She simply turned her face aside and blinked gently. I understood her thoughts. In the silence, I sensed it. She hoped Dad would show up. Perhaps, just perhaps, he would be moved enough to come see the woman he had been with for almost 40 years, lying in a hospital bed, to forgive, perhaps to inquire about her well-being. He didn't. Not once. He didn't call. I never texted. I never requested an update. I did, however, tell him. I respectfully and quietly sent messages about her condition, her fever, her suffering. She's quiet. He perused them, courteously replied. But that was all. I didn't hold him responsible. God, I really wanted to, but I was unable to. How can you hold the man responsible when everything was abruptly taken from him? The man who had been devoted, understanding, and giving, and to discover in the course of a weekend That the wife he had bid good night to for 40 years had betrayed him? You can't. I sat down with her, and I saw her being consumed by guilt. Her fever gradually subsided on the 5th day. She had a slightly less sunken face. She spoke a little louder. As he signed her release paperwork, the doctor grinned, but I noticed that his gaze lingered on her chart for a moment longer than normal. She was quieter than usual when we arrived home. It was nearly a day before she inquired about Dad. Then she shattered during supper. She mumbled, without moving her mouth. You'd think he'd check in after 40 years. Only once. Her fork made a soft clinking sound on the plate. Her fingers were shaking. Her shoulders slumped. Something suddenly snapped inside of me at that very instant. I leaned forward, dropped my spoon, and simply let it out. Are you serious? I spoke in a too composed tone. The kind of quiet that only comes before a storm. Mom, why did you ruin a 40-year marriage? A man you recently met? An exhilaration. And now that you're ill, you expect Dad to rush back? She gave me a startled expression, as if she couldn't believe I would talk to her in that manner. But I was unable to stop. No more. It was you who broke everything. This was not done by Dad. You did. You got caught up in whatever fantasy Denise gave you, ran off with a guy who obviously didn't care about you, and now you want sympathy? Tears were already starting to form as her mouth parted slightly. I murmured, my voice trembling now. Don't cry. You dare not cry. Here, you don't get to play the victim. I then walked away from the table. She sat by herself for a long time. It was only her, a dish of half-eaten rice, and the consequences of her own decisions. She knocked on my door that night after the children had gone to sleep. Rachel, she said in a paper-thin whisper, may we speak? I had no desire to, not at all. However, I knew deep down that I needed to hear it, if only to comprehend what had transpired, what she had done. For what reason had she thrown her life into the flames? With no lights on, and only the moonlight coming in through the window, we sat in the dark living room. She also informed me. It had begun modestly. Denise and Cheryl flirted with 2 other men while having a talk on the dock. Simply speak. Jokes, wine, laughter. He then asked her to return to his trailer on Tuesday. Although she claimed she didn't intend for anything to happen, it was difficult to trust her because of the way her voice broke. Caleb was his name, she murmured quietly. He gave me a sense of youth, as if I were important again. I gazed at her. I answered sourly, Dad cared about you. You were important to us all. She wiped her face and nodded. I understand. I now understand that. However, it was too late. Everything had happened so quickly. Just a single touch. One evening. Furthermore, the harm could not be undone. I immediately regretted it, she muttered. I promise I did. However, regret does not make treachery go away. Broken trust is not repaired by it. Nevertheless, she continued to think he would return despite everything. One morning, she told me, he will. He'll recall the positive. He will return. I was no longer able to listen. I murmured softly, Mom, he's not coming back. He has stated that clearly. She appeared to have been slapped by me. I started crying again, but I was unable to control myself. The truth was what she needed to hear. Mom, you destroyed that life. You set it on fire. And now you're wondering where the fire went while standing in the ashes. She sobbed more. I didn't hold her, though, since the worst was yet to come. She received the divorce papers a few days later, brought to my home, through a courier. Dad's method of showing kindness. When cancer struck, he wanted her with family by her side. Her hands shaking, she opened the envelope while seated at the kitchen table. She didn't cry when she read the words petition for dissolution of marriage. She simply fell silent. And I saw the last of her crumble. In that solitude, I had something to say, anything. However, what would you say to someone who has just realized that the door they assumed would always be open has instead slammed shut forever. Nothing is said by you. You simply take a seat next to them and let the sadness do the talking. Witnessing the disappearance of your own mother while she is still alive is a scary experience. Her soul was somewhere else, somewhere far away and inaccessible. Even yet she was right in front of me, eating breakfast, folding laundry, and wiping tears off her chin as if they were little drops of rain. As if the night Dad drove away, she had abandoned herself and never looked back to get what was left. She changed after receiving the divorce papers. Not too loudly, not in a big way. In the quiet, that is. In the way she walked like a shadow through the house, the way she ceased correcting the grammar of my children, the way she ceased inquiring about Ben's children, Mark's work, or even the weather. Though not present, she was present. She then resumed her driving, not to find Dad this time. Something worse. No, I knew even though she didn't say it directly. I noticed how she gazed at the road as if it were beckoning her to blend in with it, as though she might be able to turn back time, or even permanently disappear if she traveled far enough. I kept the keys hidden. Mark was helpful. We knew that Mom was no longer safe, but we didn't discuss it much. From herself, not from the outside world. I recall the evening she discovered we had stolen the keys. Her face was haggard, and her hands were curled into nervous fists as she stood barefoot in the kitchen. "Where are they?" Softly, she inquired. "What's where?" I made an effort to act foolish. However, halfway through, my voice broke. She didn't shout. Her eyes were hazy as she gazed at me. "I have to leave," she said. "I must think." "No, Mother. You must remain. You must take a break. You're not feeling well." "I'm all right." Gently, I said. "You're not. It's been 2 days since you last ate. You haven't slept. You've been texting your dad every hour, as if he would reconsider if you used the correct phrases." She averted her gaze in embarrassment. When she did speak, her voice broke. "All I want is his forgiveness." Forgiveness, however, is not a commodity. You don't give it enough excuses till love blossoms once more. She tried, though. She would sit in the living room corner every night with her phone in hand, and her thumb hovering over the keyboard as if she were rewriting history, one frantic message at a time. Occasionally, as if it were more genuine, she would murmur what she was typing. "Jack, I know I hurt you. I despise myself for it. However, I still adore you. Do you recall our Oregon anniversary? The river? How could you laugh when I set the stakes on fire? I'll stop at nothing. Please." He never answered. After each message, she would give me a call and ask, should I try again? I would always respond, "No, Mom. Give it up." However, she was unable to. Her only heartbeat was guilt. Not too long afterward, the ache returned, initially in her abdomen. Then she returned, next her chest. This time it was deeper, different. We returned her to the medical facility. An additional infection, the physicians remarked. Dehydration once more. It was more than just physical, though. It was evident in her eyes. Her spirit had become silent. They held her longer this time. She was getting lighter, quick. I saw her change from someone who used to sew Halloween costumes and build tree houses to someone who required assistance sitting up in bed. The woman who used to make me chicken soup when I was sick with the flu was suddenly unable to use a spoon. The diagnosis followed. Lupus. The doctor indicated that although it may have been dormant for some time, the stress, the trauma, and the mental collapse had set it off like a subterranean bomb. At first, Mom didn't respond, simply nodded. "I deserve this," she said in a whisper. That was awful to hear. I wanted to yell, "No, you don't," and shake her. My mother is still you. You're still a person. I was still irritated, though. I could still picture my father's face the night he departed. He appeared so hollow. I still felt as though I was trying to patch one bleeding heart without betraying the other. However, I never let her leave by herself. Not once. Every day in that hospital, I sat with her, holding her hand as she fell asleep and woke up. I played her favorite tunes. I gave her hair a brush. Even when the children were at a loss for words, I drew them in to greet me, and she began to return slowly. Not entirely, however, enough to stand. Enough for a small meal. Enough to make a tiny, infrequent, but genuine smile. A week later, she returned home. She didn't inquire about Dad this time. Not for some time. Rather, she began crocheting. One morning, I discovered her on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket, shaking as she looped yarn over her fingers. With a whisper, she said, "I'm making a blanket. For whom? I'm not sure. Perhaps for no one." And that was all right. Now we needed baby steps, quiet ones. I secured her a position at the nearby craft superstore. The establishment was run by a friend of mine, and they required assistance with customer service and shelf stocking. I wasn't sure she could manage it at first. However, when she began working, something changed. It provided her with a sense of direction, something to anticipate, an excuse to brush her hair and put on respectable clothing, and she was adored by the patrons, claimed that she was sweet, nice, be patient. One evening, she commented, "Someone called me Sunshine today," as she arrived home with a slight smile. I almost broke, because she used to be that, and I remembered it. Sunshine. And now, she might be once more, just possibly. Nevertheless, I occasionally caught her gazing out the window. Keep quiet. Still, deep in contemplation, do you believe he's content? One evening, she questioned me. I told the truth. "Yes," I muttered. "I believe he is." And I could see that gentle, resigned ache in her eyes. The kind that occurs when you acknowledge that you have lost something that you will never be able to regain. "Well," she muttered, "he is deserving of that." And I took her word for it, because somewhere in there was still the woman I grew up with, the one who made the best damn apple pie on earth and sang in the car. Not complete, not cured, but making an effort. And sometimes that's sufficient. Here, the seasons shifted like the wind. Before the snow covered the landscape in silence, there was the wind that blew away the summer heat, followed by leaves that murmured as you passed beneath them. As the fire roared behind us during one of those early snowfalls, I came to the profound and difficult to state realization. Nothing would ever be the same for my mother, and perhaps I wouldn't either. She currently resided close to our house in a modest, peaceful apartment, not at all like the palace by the river where she used to live. There's no boat anchored outside. There was no smoke from Dad's BBQ wafting through the windows. Only the sound of a wall clock ticking and the sporadic rattling of wind against thin glass. She was employed. She remained stable at the craft store. She was grounded by the routine in a way I didn't anticipate. She resumed brewing tea and listening to vintage jazz when she woke up at the crack of dawn. For the first time in months, she even made sugar cookies, which were overly sweet and a little burnt, but my goodness, they tasted amazing. Even yet, she trembled when she held the mixing spoon. She had a lot of pills now, with rows of pill bottles arranged across the counter like silent warriors. For her lupus, some. For the anxiousness, some. On rainy days, some for the depression that still squatted behind her eyelids. She was making it through, and she was battling in her own quiet manner. However, the woman who used to spin my kid around in our garden while dancing barefoot in the summer dark was no longer there. Mom was a completely different person now that she had regressed to the past. Neither better nor worse. It simply changed. She still occasionally inquired about Dad, never be resentful, never become upset. Simple inquiries that resemble ripples on a motionless lake. Has he visited Utah again? No, Mother. Is the camper still with him? Indeed. He has shifted about a little. He enjoys the mountains. Has he met anyone? She asked me one day, and I stopped, because he had indeed. Carol was her name, a YouTuber who travels. Perhaps 10 or 12 years his junior, laughed without effort, possessed the skills necessary to navigate a kayak, build a campfire, and prepare soup using whatever was left in the cooler. I had already met her. During a layover last fall, Dad introduced us. I saw her put a hand on his shoulder without reluctance and chuckle at his sarcastic comments. Seeing another woman next to the man who used to exclusively look at my mother was odd. Still a stranger, he was content, like very joyful, the sort of tranquility that only occurs after a storm has destroyed everything and revealed a meadow you were unaware existed beneath it. I told Mom straight out, she treats him well. She has no intention of replacing anyone. She's simply there, sharing the road. Mom gave a nod. Don't cry. No shuddering. I'm happy, she remarked. Now, he deserves soft things. I thought about the line for days, since she meant it. At last, she meant it. The betrayal wasn't the most difficult aspect. It wasn't the sexually transmitted disease, the hospital stays, or witnessing her breakdown. It was witnessing her fully awaken and come to terms with what she had sacrificed too late, what she herself had thrown into the flames. Because sometimes the one who betrays is the one who never forgives themselves. This is the truth about betrayal that no one tells you. It was with her, each day, like a second skin, but not like a wound. Like a scar she would carelessly rub, knowing it would never go away, but trying nevertheless. She would occasionally talk to herself while doing the dishes, reciting the same phrases in a prayer-like manner. I was foolish. I was very foolish. He cherished me. Everything was damaged by me. She would wipe her eyes and continue washing after the hush had subsided. My children still adored her. They adored her, even though they didn't fully comprehend her. When I needed assistance, she brought them up from school and made them crafts. She would occasionally tell them ancient stories late at night in a voice that was just about steady. She was working on a reconstruction. Not the union, not in the past, herself. Regarding Dad, he never got married again. He said he wouldn't to Ben and me. Never again. He once prodded a campfire with a stick and remarked, "Marriage was for your mother. I've already done it once." It was all of it, until it wasn't. His new companion, Carol, recognized that. She had also been divorced. No commitments, no rings. They traveled light. Just two people who shared a love of the same roots and a sense of solace in the same quiet. Sometimes they sent us postcards, images of lofty peaks and red deserts. They appeared content. They were content. And to be honest, I was happy, because Dad no longer owed Mom his life, despite all the suffering, the tears, and the nights she spent curled up on our guest bed, moaning his name. He granted her 40 years. He handed a river to her. His affection for her was more patient than other people's. He did not, however, owe her eternity. I didn't either. One morning, I watched the snow fall with her on her small porch. With her face directed to the sky, she held a warm mug while wrapped in a blanket. "I used to believe that love was inevitable," she remarked softly. "Like it became invincible if you spent enough years with someone." "It's not," I said. "No," she said with a nod. "It's not. It is brittle. Even ancient trees can catch fire." I gazed at this woman who had once shone brightly in our home, but was now merely attempting to light through the clouds. I forgave her then and there, not too loudly. Don't make a long speech. Only in my heart. I let the rage out, the letdown, the sorrow, because she had enough to live on already, and because there is never just one story in life, real life. There are 100 storylines taking place simultaneously. betrayal and love, happiness and suffering, grief and recovery. Occasionally, within the same week, do you think the river ever remembers us? She once asked me. No, Mom, I answered with a smile and a kiss on the head. However, I believe it is forgiving. And perhaps that's sufficient. Perhaps we don't need to be remembered when all else goes. Simply pardoned